The time is just gone 8:30 p.m. as we continue with Wednesday nights with myself, Inayet Wadee, and we are now going to focus on the political developments in the United Kingdom with the resignation of Boris Johnson and with Liz Truss taking the role as a new UK Prime Minister. And there are a number of issues that we obviously need to speak about. We're looking at ideological perspectives, we're looking at Brexit, we're looking at her position on Africa and the Middle East. And to unpack what Liz Truss means for the UK and the rest of the world, we are now joined by Dr Yvonne Ridley, British journalist and author, for the next half an hour. Yvonne, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, and we thank you for taking time out and talking to us this evening.
So, yes, we're in for interesting times, and not necessarily good ones either.
Well, certainly is, and I'm sure that, many are actually glad to see the back of Boris Johnson. But the key question is what comes after Boris Johnson? And we know who's come after Boris Johnson has been Liz Truss.
Well, yes, they do say be careful what you wish for. And looking back at 12 years of Conservative rule in Britain, you think, well, maybe David Cameron wasn't that bad, or Theresa May. But Liz Truss, I fear, is not going to be a friend for Muslims, a friend for Palestinians, and I doubt that she will be a great friend for Africa either.
Yvonne, what do we know about Liz Truss, her background, looking at her from an ideological perspective as well? What are some ideological perspectives? And also, I think many are asking this question in terms of how different will she be from her predecessor, Boris Johnson?
Well, she was brought up by left-wing parents and spent some of her childhood here in Scotland. And she went to a comprehensive school. She comes from comparatively humble backgrounds when you look at previous members of the cabinet, old Etonians and people of privilege and from the elite. And in her youth, she was quite a radical. She joined the Liberal Democrat Party, and she was calling for the abolishment of the monarchy, which is quite astonishing when you see her where she is today. Obviously, something has happened on that political journey, because she's now bordering on being on the far right of her party. And it's interesting that as she became Prime Minister, she took time out to praise her predecessor, Boris Johnson, and yet she ignored Rishi Sunak, who she spent the pair of them were in this two-horse race for the leadership. And anybody to do with Rishi Sunak has been cast out and is certainly not in her cabinet. And this is not a cabinet of unity either. It's a cabinet of the far right. So it's going to be interesting to see how she gathers a momentum while keeping various members of the party at bay. There's a cost of living crisis. Extortionate energy bills are heading this way in Britain, and quite frankly, 2/3 of UK families will be in energy poverty by the end of the year. Workers, families, small businesses, we are all facing a crisis that has been unprecedented. So history will, it'll be interesting to see how she is judged on dealing with this crisis. And she has described herself as somebody who is capable, who will deliver. She kept going on about deliver, deliver, deliver. And she also said that she'd stood up to Putin. And she made two references to Putin and the Russian war. And she also promises to transform the UK into an aspiration nation. But quite frankly, I'm not sure where she's going to get the money from. She's already blaming the war on Russia for the state of Britain, but Britain is in a state because of Brexit. And unfortunately, she's not going to even attempt to reverse any of the Brexit issues. She says the usual that Western leaders like to say when they talk about freedom and democracy, and concern about security at home, as well as security abroad. So the next few weeks, I think, are going to be very, very interesting. She says that her first priority is to get Britain working, which means sorting out the hospitals, the schools, broadband, all of these burning issues. She's describing sorting out energy bills and security as a second priority, again making and alluding to the war in Ukraine. And her third priority, she says, is to put the NHS on a firm footing. But we can only wait and see. As for people overseas, I would say to the Palestinians, don't hold out any high hopes from Truss. She is probably going to turn out to be the Conservatives' greatest supporter of Israel in 12 years. And they've always, from Cameron, May, Johnson, they've all been pro-Israeli in their outlook, and she is going to be that, but on steroids. I mean, just a few days ago, some British ambassadors, past and present, sent her a letter in her capacity as Foreign Secretary, and said, please don't move the British Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Don't do this, but there's a very strong chance that she will try and do this in order to please the very strong and influential Zionist lobby that exists in Westminster. So despite all sorts of influence that has already been brought to bear from some real heavyweights from the Foreign Office, I don't think that she is going to take any notice. Quite how she will react further down the line remains to be seen. But she is, or she has indicated in the past that she's open to outlawing the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment and sanction movement, which has been a very effective tool of peaceful resistance used by civil society in Palestine as well as around the world. So, as I say, looking at it from a Palestinian perspective, there's no good news coming on the horizon at all. I think that, we're all in for very tough times.
Yes, and also Yvonne, looking at Britain, and the radar is going to be focused on the British political landscape, especially after Boris Johnson gone. But also when one looks at both of them, and when we talk about similarities, both Liz Truss and Boris Johnson come from highly questionable backgrounds, and that is one thing that, hey, they have got in common, and that is similar. And also looking at like all the other issues that you have been unpacking, the key issue here is domestically, how is she going to be seeing? Will she be able to deliver? I mean, if her core immediate priorities are going to be to address the multiple crises that the United Kingdom is actually facing. And also, you mentioned it's not good news for locals. And when we talk of locals, we talk of minorities like the Muslim community. So, domestically, these are going to be challenging times, having somebody like Liz Truss as the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. I mean, she has, it's good news in some ways for people overseas that we have this horrendous crisis on our doorstep, because at least she will have to be focused in the immediate short term with the crisis fueled by spiraling inflation and rising energy prices. So at least she'll be quite busy firefighting in her own backyard before she can really start to do any damage overseas. But her record as a foreign secretary, and don't forget also, she used to be a minister for international trade. This also gives us a clue into how she is going to react around the world. I've already said it's, very bad news, I think, for Palestinians and the BDS movement. But I don't think it's great news for elsewhere in the world. The UK has very strong Gulf ties traditionally, and Liz Truss was always ready to look the other way over human rights abuses when it came to dealing with the GCC countries. And we saw just recently Joe Biden humiliate himself when he went onto the red carpet in Jeddah and fist bumped the de facto leader of Saudi, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And 3 years ago, Biden had said, I will make Saudi a pariah state for what MBS had done to Jamal Khashoggi, and the CIA were holding the Crown Prince accountable for the horrific murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist Saudi dissident. And despite that, 3 years down the line, as soon as there's an oil crisis, which has been caused by the Ukraine war, there he is, the most powerful man in the world, going cap in hand to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to try and get guarantees about oil prices. And if America is doing that, you can bet your bottom dollar that Britain will fall in line, because the special relationship with America, as one-sided as it is, will very much continue under Liz Truss. And that's largely because of Brexit. Brexit has made the UK quite an outsider with regards to European issues now. So we're short of friends. And so I would imagine that Britain will fall in line with anything that America wants. And at the moment, America wants oil and is prepared to kiss the feet of all sorts of odious characters in the Middle East, just to guarantee oil supplies. So, Truss is not going to rock the boat there either. And she already has a history with Iran, and it's not a very good one. She holds the Russian leadership in contempt, and they hold her in contempt as well. So it isn't looking good. As I say, as far as the outside world is concerned, just be glad that we have a crisis on our doorstep, which is really going to focus her attention. But she will be doing business with the Middle East countries, and she won't give us stuff about human rights abuses, and I guess that will be the same in her dealings with India, as well as other countries in Asia and Africa. So
yes, I'd like to actually come to Africa, but while we are on the subject of Brexit, and we know about Boris Johnson, and early on when he became the Prime Minister, and his position, his stance on Brexit, and obviously she's inheriting a lot that Boris Johnson had done as far as Brexit is concerned. But there are many issues, there are still outstanding issues, final issues that she needs to obviously take care of. And the question would be, how capable will she be to manage some of these final outstanding issues, Yvonne?
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, at the moment, she's enjoying the amazing majority that was enjoyed by Boris Johnson when I think he had over 80 MPs as a majority. So she will be able to get quite a lot of her policies, in theory anyway, pushed through the British Parliament, because she will have that support. And she, has made it clear in her praise of Boris Johnson that she's probably going to more or less go in the same direction as Boris Johnson did. And she said history will be kind to Boris Johnson. I thought, only if he's writing it, which is what he will probably do in his first year away from Downing Street. He'll probably sit down and write the history of how great his premiership was. But she is still vowing to deport more migrants to Rwanda, and I'm sure that a lot of people in Africa find that whole idea really unpalatable. But it looks as though there'll be no change there as well. So very, very
Yes.
trying times, and I would think that countries like Rwanda should be wary of being exploited once again by Britain.
Well, certainly, and obviously we know the colonial history and the ugly colonial past of the British. Now, I've just got a comment that has come through from one of our viewers, Afzal Nur Muhammad, who writes, when it comes to the West and Western leaders, it doesn't matter who is elected. Policies toward the Middle East and Africa stays the same, post-colonial imperialism, which is exactly what you have been saying, Yvonne.
Absolutely. And, British people are not taught about the real side effects of colonialism as experienced by people on the ground in Africa and in India. As school kids, we were told that the British Empire was a force for good. We waved our Union Jacks in all innocence, not realizing that we were waving the butcher's apron, which is what its real name is. And it's a lot of people today in Britain are still not aware of the true extent and of the brutality of British colonialism.
Yes. Now, Yvonne, we've been talking about the, like the Middle East. We've been talking about it's not good for news for Muslims, but just looking at British society in general and their reaction. We're not talking about Muslims. We're talking about the rest of British society. Do they care whether they have somebody like Boris Johnson or Liz Truss in power?
I think that politics has been dumbed down so much that Boris Johnson was able to hang on for nearly 3 years, whereas standards in public life were so high 20 years ago. He would have been out on his ear after the first lie unraveled. Unfortunately, you get the government you deserve. And at the moment, the British public have allowed these privileged elite to take over and take control in Westminster. And I'm not sure if Liz Truss, her arrival will change that. But the British voters, they have a lot to answer for. I mean, I'm living in Scotland and campaigning very hard for independence with other people living in Scotland. Scotland hasn't voted for a Conservative government since 1959, and yet the English voters continually get them back into power. And it's very frustrating for Scottish people who didn't vote for Brexit. They didn't want Brexit. The same as the Irish, the people in Northern Ireland, they didn't want Brexit either. But we've been saddled with it because of the English voters. And it is increasingly frustrating. Will we get a breakup of the union? That would be fantastic if it happened. If there was a united Ireland, which is looking increasingly likely these days. And if Ireland goes, Scotland will almost certainly go. We're still hoping for an independence referendum. This is what Nicola Sturgeon has promised us for October 2023. And a lot of us are working towards that date because we want to break away, not from the English, but we just want to break away from the power base in Westminster, which in recent years has been mired with scandal and corruption.
Well, Yvonne, as we speak, the world is actually a very, very scary place when we're talking about leadership. We're talking about Liz Truss. We've spoken about Boris Johnson. We had people like Donald Trump. You look at Macron. You're looking at Modi in India. We look at Imran Khan when he was removed, looking at the Sharif government, looking at MBS. So clearly, when we're looking at all these type of leaders, including Liz Truss, we have every reason to be concerned and to be scared as well.
Absolutely. It is vitally important, though, that we don't switch off. It's all too easy to walk away from politics and just say, I'm done with this. But I would urge everyone to keep actively involved in politics and get involved, even if it's just at grassroots level, because when people come together, they can change things. I was just looking into the recent history, and when Romania got rid of the most brutal tyrant in Ceausescu, that all started and was completed within 12 days. When the people finally, something snapped and they rose up and they got rid of this brutal dictator, and it took 12 days. 12 days of demonstrating and campaigning until they got onto the road for democracy. And look at South Africa. I know that things aren't perfect, far from it, but look where you are today to look where you were when Nelson Mandela was still in Robben Island. And when the system unraveled, that was through people power. And unfortunately, I think a lot of South African voters just thought, right, we've done our job. We can sit back now and relax. We've got rid of the apartheid regime. But you can't take your eye off the ball at all. Otherwise, that is when corruption comes in, and it's like a cancer, and it can be toxic. So, we are the masters of the politicians. We aren't the servants of the politicians. And we as voters, doesn't matter where we live in the world, we as voters should remember that and hold our politicians to account and demand a higher standard than we have at the moment. Because east to west, north to south, the politicians that we have in governments around the world today are shocking.
Well, certainly, and we're going to have to leave it at that. And obviously, I'm not shocked that it is shocking, considering that what we have. But Dr. Yvonne Ridley, as always, we appreciate you taking time out, talking to us, and we wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Dr. Yvonne Ridley joining us out of the UK, unpacking Liz Truss becoming the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and what can be expected during her tenure of office as the Prime Minister of the UK. And with that, I'm going to be signing off once again. It's been wonderful. It's been great being in your company, our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms. Salam Media, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you have missed out on the discussions that we've had tonight, just log into our social media platforms on the YouTube channel, and you can visit all that we have been discussing. So until we meet again, from myself and the team here at Salam Media, Assalamu alaikum